Okay, there we go. Good morning again. And this is Jason from RobotDogMusic and Radar right here, of course. You've just been listening to a lot of stuff. This is probably a little overpatched, but I wanted to leverage as much as I possibly could. This is the next new module coming from RobotDogMusic, LIGO, not named after the gravitational wave observatory, but it does kind of a similar thing where it is observing waves and just does some logic operations on them to give you a whole lot of options for outputs. And you can see there's a whole lot of outputs on this particular module. So what's going on here is I have the lovely Batumi LFO, two channels of that. I tried to make these line up colors on the data scope, and we'll get a close-up of that in just a second. But it takes in two LFOs and then does comparison operations. So you get outputs for if the first one is higher than the second one higher than the first one, if they're both above zero or both below zero. And that gives you all sorts of involving patterns in quick succession. Also up top you get your first LFO back again, buffered, so you can continue that on to somewhere else in your patch without the need for mults or anything else. It just comes right back. And then the second lower output is actually the two CVs added together. Of course I say CV, but this is literally a large number of op amps. This was my my experiment to see just how much I could get out of a couple op amps on a board. And you can run this at audio rates very easily, which certainly can come up with some really interesting things. That's actually pulsing very, very quickly right now. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you could see that. So you can definitely go into audio rate territory with it. It does put out gates per for the LFO, so the conditions are always high or low. Trying to get off the grid is kind of was my objective here. And with an LFO or a sequencer, you can put sequences in here that you can that have repeatability. You can get some really musical but off-grid patterns with the LIGO. So I'm going to unpatch it here so we can get a closer look at what's going on. So here we are with all the patch cables removed. LIGO is pretty simple at its heart. It takes those two LFOs in, and these are the two LFOs coming out of Batumi. I tried to color code the cables here for the traces on the data. Of course, I don't have any green cables, so pink, because pink and green. So the green trace is this pink first channel coming in here, and then the blue is obviously the blue trace here. So you have inputs 1 and 2, and I'll show you what's coming out of the channels here down below, where we have 1 is higher than 2, and then 2 is higher than 1. So these kind of alternate as you're going along, and you can see, I hope, pretty clearly that the when the conditions are met, you get a gate output on those channels. These are both the same, so you get two outputs. They're buffered, 1 and 2. So you can take those outputs, those gate outputs, and run them all over your system without the need for mults. And then if we go over these other conditions, now these are all based around the zero crossing. So when your 1 and 2, both waveforms are high, you'll see that this goes high. And then when your the yellow trace again, when both waveforms are low, below the zero, you get a gate output. They're not necessarily the same ever as your LFOs. I'll speed this up so we can see, but you can see that these gate events are happening at very different times than the others, and taking those and interposing them in between each other gives some really interesting results. Another thing you can do is certainly is send something repeatable. Obviously, the Batumi, you can reset any LFO with a reset. You can get some more regular patterns with it by simply resetting, sending a reset signal to your LFO, and then getting some really interesting off-grid stuff, but it's still repeatable. Same thing with sequencers. You can actually run a sequence in here, and assuming your sequencer outputs the negative into the negative voltages, all the outputs will function normally. And you get some really interesting patterns out of your sequence itself. Run an LFO against your sequencer is actually kind of fun. And finally, because these are all op amps, you can ramp this up very, very fast. In fact, you can send full audio waveforms through here, and it'll give you some very unique kind of pulse width versions of your audio. Audio path. These blue LEDs are very bright. They will not be on the final module, I guarantee. But if you're interested in LIGO or any of the other RobotDogMusic modules, so feel free to send me a note, support@robotdogmusic.com, and look forward to hearing from you.